It's great to have you with us for another in-depth discussion with a Kansas notable. I'm Victor Hogstrom. This week, our one-on-one guest is Dr. Larry Mitnaul. He's a psychiatrist specializing in children and adolescents. Originally from Texas, Mitnaul joined Wichita's Ascension Via Christi Medical Group in 2017. Dr. Mitnaul says his career path was influenced by his own experience with psychiatry when he was in high school. But helping young people is not just his vocation, it's his life. He has 5 children of his own. In 2021, Mitnaul began hosting a monthly program on PBS Kansas, that's this station, and it is called Cause for Hope, focused on the mental health of kids and teens. We hope the show will prove valuable for families navigating their ways through challenging times. Coming up, we'll talk about that and discover why Dr. Mitnaul finds his job so rewarding and why he is hopeful for the future. This should be an interesting and enjoyable half hour as I go one-on-one with psychiatrist Dr. Larry Mitnaul. Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Victor Hogstrom. It's a pleasure to welcome Dr. Larry Mitnaul to the program. Doc, welcome to One-on-One.
Thank you for having me. It really is a pleasure.
In my introduction, I quoted you as saying that your interest in child psychiatry stems from your own experiences as a young person growing up.
Yes.
Tell us about that
Sure.
experience.
You know, I think there are maybe a couple of streams that I look back on them now and think they were preparations for this moment in time and for finding psychiatry as a field. One of them is growing up in a household in which my dad is a pastor and was actively doing that when I was growing up. And so there were so many family conversations or times after dinner where, you know, he and my mom might be in counseling with someone or talking with a family. And while I wasn't aware of the details of those conversations or privy to what was really going on, I appreciated, I think, the fact that here's my dad using his knowledge and skill and ability to speak and empathize with people to help them to solve some of the problems going on in their life. And then, you know, in my own kind of development in middle school, I guess I was elected by a teacher to be part of a group called the Peer Mediators, where we did a training before the beginning of the semester on how to resolve peer conflicts. And so, I mean, I can't think of better early child psychiatric training than how do you come into a conflictual situation and help resolve it among your peers. Now, I don't ever remember really being formally called on to use that, but I think those are some of the early ingredients that helped me to know I enjoy hearing people's story and hearing about their lives, and then finding some way to, you know, accompany them if I can along the journey.
So you really didn't have a psychiatric problem. You just listened to other stories and
Yes.
And that kind of prepared you.
Yes, and I think it's not an uncommon thing. You know, sometimes in the clinic when I'm meeting with teenagers, I'll ask them who they are in their friend group, and so it's not uncommon to hear from the one who, well, I'm the person who everyone can, you know, talk to or tends to tell them about their troubles or difficulties. And so, again, when I look back on my high school experience, especially, you know, I apparently I was a listening ear for a good number of friends, and I think that too probably helped to form me.
I bet you were friends to a lot of people then.
I did. I mean, I had a lot of fun those days. Yeah.
You also from a military family.
Yes, I am. So I grew up in Fort Hood, Killeen, Texas, and so that's an Army base, and we had moved around quite a bit. So I was born in Germany, and we did Georgia, New York, Germany, Texas. So quite a bit of moving.
Typical military.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. But as you were growing up, you enjoyed playing the drums and writing music.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, you're right. You're right.
Tell us about that. And my follow-up to that would be, how then did you develop this interest in medicine?
Yes. So my dad is a drummer, and actually of
the preacher
drummer. Yes. So which is kind of handy when you're starting a church and you need someone to do the music ministry. You've got it in house. And so I think watching him. So clearly my dad was formative in a lot of ways, and that's one of them. And so from the get-go, if I could be behind the drums or stealing his drumsticks or tapping on books, and I probably in most households you'd be admonished for doing that, but usually my mom would yell Larry, and I'm Junior, so we never knew if she was yelling at my dad or yelling at me. So thankfully I was able to kind of nurture that. Going through medical school, I initially went in thinking I'm probably going to do surgery. I mean, I love using my hands, and because I feel so confident at doing that, that'll probably be the way. And then I just had some really great experiences that kind of shifted me towards psychiatry. And but thankfully, the music has stayed a part of me and what I've been able to do.
You still play the drums today?
I do. To my wife's chagrin, no, she loves it, I think. That in our basement right now, I have both an acoustic drum set that I'm babysitting from a friend and my own electric drum set. So I played through college, played a little bit in med school, and now I get to play with my kids.
So did you study music?
I didn't formally. I mean, I really just...
but you wrote music.
Yes, I did.
Tell us about that.
So high school, our band director gave us the okay and green light to compose or to translate something that you hear on the radio to the band, as long as it was relatively appropriate. And so, and I had some software that allowed me to do that, to write, the French horn and clarinet and tuba parts. And so I just kind of continued. Once I realized that I really enjoyed doing that, I loved listening to music and trying to deconstruct it and write it for instruments. And so I just have continued with it. So no formal training. I just enjoy it and find it a fun pastime.
How much did music help you in medical school?
Tremendously. In many ways, it was, other than kind of the support of my wife and family, I mean, I think the other pillar for me that helped me so much, I mean, med school, like I think any school, it requires just a lot of time, a lot of focus, a lot of energy. And so you really are in desperate need of times to just be able to relax and enjoy yourself or operate another side of your brain. So, there was no better break from memorizing lists of viruses than, sitting down with a hand drum and bongos or a guitar and playing and making music with friends.
You mentioned your family. Tell us about your family. We know you have 5 children.
Yes. So my wife and I have 5 children. The eldest is almost 13 and the youngest is 3. So we have 4 boys and 1 girl. And they are everything. I mean, I think, I think all parents would probably say that too. They kind of reorganize your life and help give it that much more focus. And in my world of sitting and working with families, I think one of the things it probably offers me is maybe some humility too, about how difficult and tough it can be to try to be everything for your children as well. So I think I come home from work and then I hug them extra tight, thinking about all the lives that I've been kind of walking alongside during the day.
But I also understand they are well-behaved children. So, doctor, the question is, what are you doing that some other parents are failing to do?
Sure. I think marry well, and is probably the first suggestion if you can. I do feel really, really blessed. My wife Katie is tremendous. I mean, she is probably every personal statement I've ever written. She's the grammarian behind making sure that it all, flows well and looks well. But she's also the heart of our family unit too. So I don't know that I have a particular secret or who's been telling you about my kids' well behavior. They've just caught me at really good moments, because certainly there are challenging times thrown in there as well. But I think, I think actually in some ways we're a good balance for each other, in that her upbringing, she was raised by doctors and then studied theology, and I was raised by, a pastor and became a doctor later on. So I think in some ways we
The
were
reverse.
probably groomed for one another,
Right.
actually, and so hopefully that's translated into helping us in parenting.
So, Doc, tell us, what do you see as the biggest mistakes parents make today?
Yeah, biggest mistakes. So, and maybe I wouldn't categorize it as a mistake as much as maybe just an oversight, or things that parents aren't aware of. And that is, I think there's a great pull that is interfering sometimes in the child and family relationship. And what I mean is, our lives are really busy, and I think that's always been the case, that people have been, running here and there and had sports and extracurricular activities. But I think, both with technology and those types of things, while wonderful and splendid, and certainly you'll find them, in my home as well, with games and devices and things like that. I think there is kind of an unspoken thief of sorts that can sometimes steal time away from families really bonding and connecting in the ways that they used to. So I'll give you just a short example. I think when I think of families and how they persevere and thrive, if a mom and a teen were to have an argument, 20, 30 years ago, the teen storms off to their room, the parent storms off to their room, and then later on, because there's nowhere else to go and nothing else to do, there's a chance, an opportunity for them to come back together and to resolve or work through or move through. And again, that's the idyllic situation. Sometimes it's days and weeks of cold treatment before you get there. I think now there's an opportunity for children to, retreat to their room, process with friends, but never make it to that next step of the family, of the child and the parent getting together again to resolve and move forward together. And so I think that's one of the things that we probably underestimate in our current time. And it's something that our parents couldn't have prepared us for, because that wasn't a potential obstacle then.
All right, so you are a child psychiatrist.
Yes.
But when the child has a problem, so-called problem, people tend to first think about a social worker or a psychologist. Why a psychiatrist?
Yes, that's a really great question. So it turns out that there are some additional tools that can be helpful in helping us to understand how children are getting along and some of the difficulties they're having. And so we know that having someone to help a child and a family gain insight into their emotional lives can be really transformative in a child's life. Sometimes, even with really great skills and tools that we try to, give to kids and to families, they can still encounter problems that require a little bit more to help their brains and bodies respond appropriately. And then that's where it can be helpful to also think about, medication being a role in that. Sometimes, too, that our role as psychiatrists, which is unique and I enjoy doing as well, is that we get to do a little bit of detective work. So there are certain things and certain medical conditions, too, that mask as primarily a behavior thing or look mostly like a mood thing. And so sometimes when families are meeting me, they're surprised to learn that, I'm ordering tests and things to also rule out other organic things that can be going on in a child's body that can also make them struggle in ways that they don't foresee.
To what extent do young people now have different problems, or say more severe problems, than those of past generations?
I think probably the problems are the same, pretty much the same, but I think the degree or intensity of certain parts of those can be magnified depending on the culture and time that families find themselves in. With my family, so we just finished, we'll occasionally just kind of pick up a book and read, a chapter or so at dinner time. And we finished one called 7 Alone, in which, these 7 children are migrating, west. So this is really early America. And so it's funny hearing my children laugh at the things that they get upset at each other about, these siblings who are trying to do it on their own. And so I think there are a lot of things that parallel. In terms of what's different about some of the struggles, I think in terms of connectedness, in terms of feeling kind of bonded one to another, I think that's really heightened in this time. And it's something that's actually maybe counterintuitive, or would have been counterintuitive to me. And probably the way that I put it in context is, when I visit my youngest brother in New York City, or when I did, a year or two ago, you could be surrounded by people and still feel lonely, just because, not from any ill will, but people are focused and you're in a sea of people, but you can still feel kind of alone in that. And I think our children, I notice a little bit more of that, sometimes struggling against the tide, when we think that they're more supported and more connected, but they feel like they're surrounded. I see them almost as a child in New York who's surrounded by people, but sometimes struggling to find those really strong connections.
So if a person feels lonely in the group, what's his or her next step?
Yeah. So I think number one is I love the family system. I think that's the first net, and if we can make that strong, then that's the first place to see if we can't kind of enrich and help that unit to function better together. And so that might mean more family movie nights and puzzle and playing Uno, or sometimes a parent knocking on the door and watching YouTube with their child and eating a bowl of Cheerios sitting side by side with one another. So I think that's my first and kind of primary response. If there's a way for the family to kind of fill that void, that can be helpful. And then I think moving out from there, so looking at the other fields of influence and interest in a child's life, and then finding some way to meet that as best as you can.
So, doctor, what are the most common challenges that your patients face today?
Sure.
And would COVID be blamed for those challenges?
Okay. That's a really good question, and perhaps a challenging one, actually. I think probably the greater majority of kids that I see today is probably more heavily sided towards anxiety, depression, and ADHD. Again, I see a lot of other things too, trauma and whatnot, but those are probably the biggest three. In terms of their vulnerability during this last year with COVID, I think I wouldn't blame COVID for their struggle, but it certainly has exposed some vulnerabilities and intensified some of those things. So if I had a child who, a year ago we might have evaluated and might not have recommended even therapy or medication or, more testing, I've had some come back in this time and really find themselves struggling, and maybe we have needed to, think of a more intensive plan to help them.
Despite the challenges, you're still hopeful for the future.
I am.
Describe that light at the end of the tunnel.
Sure. I think, thankfully, humanity is very resilient, and so when I take a look at where our ancestors have come through and what they've persevered through plagues and famine and wars, it makes me hopeful that the human, when posed with some really threatening things that threatens to kind of limit their world and limit their life, that we find a way to hold on to the things that matter most and persevere and find goodness and light. And so I'm not alone in music making. My patients come in and tell me, yeah, I've been writing new songs or doing poetry, or now that now I really am interested in going to soccer. I mean, last year my parents put me in it, and I was grateful for COVID to strike in the spring. But now actually I'm really longing for that connection.
Do you have a psychiatric profile of yourself?
That is a really good question. I don't think that so I will say this. Be part of psychiatric training and supervision. So as a psychiatrist, medicine is still very much an apprenticeship. So you see a patient and you talk to your attending who's been doing it for years and years and years. The unspoken thing that happens in psychiatry is that you're also getting insight about yourself when you're in supervision. So I think all psychiatrists in the back of their mind are, thinking, I think my supervisor is probably evaluating me as well. And so one of the things that you're led to understand, and that helps you as a clinician, is how you feel in the exchange, right? So there are certain, personality types that might make you feel upset or sad or frustrated. And so often in supervision, the attending would say, "How did that make you feel?" And you'd think, "Oh, are you trying to analyze my feelings?" But actually, that ends up being a diagnostic tool for you. So I probably do, in my mind, have a profile for myself, both of what my tendencies are, and then how I interpret those feelings or moods based on what I'm seeing or doing.
Okay. We've been talking very seriously about psychiatry.
Yes.
So let's play a little game
Okay,
that
good.
we do on this show. And I'll say a word and you tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
Sure.
All right, the first word, relaxation.
Camping.
Oh, why is that?
The best vacation that I've ever experienced was a camping trip with my family. We happened to be in Maine. We were living in New Hampshire at the time, but we went up to Maine, and it was just beautiful. The water was scenic, beautiful vistas and views. We were disconnected mostly from the rest of the world, so it was just us together enjoying good food and time together. So that's my memory.
Anxiety.
Fear, which they're kind of synonyms, right, of one another. But yeah, the feeling of being afraid and found insufficient for the task.
Anger.
Drumming, actually. I mean, it's a really great antidote to, or not antidote, but a way of expressing it in a beautiful way.
Beating up on the drums.
Yes,
is that
yes.
what it is?
I mean, I call it beautiful.
Taking it out on the drums.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Joy.
Singing or music in general. Yeah. When you said joyful, it made me think of joyful, which, how can you not think of that and it put a smile on your face?
Confusion.
The teenage years. No, that's not one word. But no, it really is.
It's the first thing that comes to mind.
The first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah,
yes, the teenage years. Yeah. I think there's so much. The teens that I see, I love that age because that really is a lot of the identity formation, time when they're trying to sort out, is this just something I'm interested in and that I like, or is this a part of me and who I will become? And so, which are really big philosophical questions to have while your voice is changing and your body's changing and all those other things too. But that's a confusing time. So, yeah.
Solitude.
Prayer. I think, I mean, certainly as a psychiatrist and just in being humble, there are things that often are, the journeys together are kind of, they take a while to get to the destination. And so I can't, and that's probably true about most physicians, that, you realize that with as much knowledge and skill as you have, it's not all in your hands. And that actually can be a healthy thing, that, the things that I can't, fix or be as helpful as I want to be, I kind of offer those things up and work to get better.
Chaos.
Saturday morning in my house.
Oh. But these are very well behaved.
They're well behaved, though. Yes. By all other standards, they're well behaved.
Okay. Yeah. Hate.
Division. And I think, and certainly, talking about emotions like anger and hate, I think there can certainly be kind of righteous forms of those things directed towards, real evil. But hate. I love the theme of the show, kind of cause for hope, because I do think there's a way that we can get stuck in the cycle of just dwelling on this person is against this person, or choosing these things to be, to pit one against the other. So.
Love.
My wife.
All right.
Yeah.
Sports.
Basketball. And tennis, actually. But I love to watch. One of my favorite basketball players is Steph Curry. Actually, that's the only reason I watch some NBA basketball. Actually, is I think there's a virtuosity to his play, and I think when I see that type of excellence, it just makes me happy. I enjoy watching it. And then I enjoy playing tennis, and my kids like playing tennis too.
Music is the last one.
Music. Oh, that's a good one. going to go to my family too. It's honestly the first thing that comes to mind. We've been blessed in that the kids have been interested enough in music to want to do some of that, and so I think my closest friends and now the world maybe knows that one of my dreams is for the Mitnaul 5, to maybe do some things together. So I have these visions of Christmases and birthday celebrations in which everyone is playing the thing that they enjoy, and we're together harmoniously.
The 5 kids, and you leading,
and me
on drums.
Leading. Right? Yes.
That would be a beautiful thing to watch.
It would.
Yes.
Thanks.
You host a program on PBS Kansas,
yes.
Channel 8. Tell us about this program, and you mentioned the title a minute ago.
Yes, Cause for
Hope, right? Tell us about it, and what is it that you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think probably in the simplest way is just adding more of a positive understanding of what mental wellness is, and not just a focus on the absence or deficit of something that's missing, and taking kind of that holistic mindset and talking about issues that greatly affect kids and teens. And hopefully presenting it in a way that they can both understand and take something from it. And if it helps to transform or improve a life in some way, then it's all worth it. I mean, that's the effort. Yeah.
Sounds like a good program, if I may say so myself.
It is. It's been such an honor to work on it, and I'll be honest. I mean, really, a lot of the joy and the vision has come from the people that I'm surrounded with and helping to do it. And so Roz being among them has
Right.
been just such a wind in my sails, and I get inspired in doing the work.
That's Roz Hutchinson you're
Yes,
talking
that's
about,
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Roz Hutchinson.
So my final question is, what is the one thing we can all do to improve our mental health?
One thing. That's hard because I like to give lists.
Oh.
Let's see. No, I'll constrain it to one. So what's one thing? I think one thing would be to look for a way to practice gratitude. I think there's so many ways that we can do that, but that's probably one of the most consistent, concrete things that I try to give to my families as well when I see them, because that's something they can do right away and they can win. So that might be a hug, that might be a high five, that might be a calling someone that you haven't, that might be saying thanks to a parent. So
simple gratitude.
Yes.
On that note, Dr. Larry Mitnaul, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It really has been an honor for me.
And thank you for watching this edition of One-on-One. Our email address is oneonone@kpts.org. That's if you have a question or comment. We enjoy hearing from you. Until next time, I'm Victor Hogstrom. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you again soon.